And as I let out my breath on the exhale, it's like my body disintegrated into atoms. And I felt like I died right in that moment. And in that moment, I had the most intense sense of terror I had ever felt in my life. And I had been in war, so I was always in a constant state of fear.
The following video does not glorify drug use, but instead it intends to promote harm reduction by discouraging the ignorant use of specific drugs, as well as harm elimination by discouraging certain people from using specific drugs altogether. There is no right or wrong way to consume these substances, but there are unsafe and safer ways, and what's more comfortable for one person may be more dangerous for another. Before watching this video, please understand that psychedelic experiences may not be entirely predictable, but that doesn't mean that bad trips and good trips are random. Rather, it means psychedelic experiences are influenced by factors such as the individual's given setting, and dosage at that specific point in their life. Therefore, you will not experience what these people have experienced, but you could potentially experience something similar. However, these are random people, so please do not make decisions based on what they say without your own due diligence. And also, take note, once again, that these substances affect everyone differently, especially those with pre-existing mental conditions.
What was your first impression of psychedelics before you ever considered tripping?
Initially, because I guess you could call me one of the first individuals in the millennial era. So we came from that there's no hope in dope kind of era, just say no to drugs, born during like the onset of the Reagan administration's efforts with the anti-drug policies. So well into my 20s, there was a really anti generalized drugs perspective drilled into me. So again, well into my 20s, I had a very anti-drug in all capacity kind of mentality. And it wasn't until getting out of the military and suffering with my own mental disease, mental disorder issues, and desperately trying to find a way to essentially carry on with life because I had refused, or I had negative reactions, but also adamantly refused conventional forms of treatment that they were trying to impress and put me on. So I believe the first time I heard about psychedelics, I had heard about them before, but like I said, I had a very anti-drug sentiment, was through the Joe Rogan Experience. I had recently gotten into listening to his interviews, and he just constantly talked about psychedelics. And at first, again, with my perspective, I was just like, these are just people who like to do drugs. But the more experts he brought on and the more he talked about his own experiences, especially with regards to the positive impacts on mental disease or psychological disease, whatever you want to call it, the more it started to impress upon me that this might be a potential pathway for my own issues. And from there, I just started doing my own research and looking into the field itself, seeing all the positive outcomes that had been coming forth at the time, both clinically and from anecdotal evidence. And then from there, through I guess you could say I researched it for about 2 to 3 years. I hadn't done anything yet, but I had reached a very low point in my life at the time. And it was in that instance that I had made the decision that this is it. I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, then I'm just done. I had gotten to that point. And that was when I decided, this is where I'm going to head. And from there is when I had my first experience, which was approximately, it's 2023 now, so I believe it was 5 years ago.
Okay, and did that first experience stand out to you, or did it impact you in any way?
Yeah, so that first experience which was with DMT, was possibly the most impactful journey I've ever been on, and the one that probably saved my life. Because, as I stated previously, it was make it or break it. Like, I had gotten to a point where if this didn't work, like I was committed to just killing myself. I guess you could say the proof is in the result, because I'm still here today. It had an overwhelming impact on multiple aspects of my life, gave me new direction, gave me new purpose, and, made me really commit to the power of this field and dedicate my life towards not only advocacy, but being an example and a guiding individual for other people who are also looking into the field.
That's awesome, and I'm happy that that you are still here today. That's awesome for you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, that's we're definitely gonna get more into that specific experience if you're willing to. How old were you back then? It's 5 years ago.
So 5 years ago, I would have been 31, I believe. So it was in 2016, I believe it was that first experience. Yeah, so I was 31.
You remember how much specifically you had taken?
I believe so. I call it my first dose, but technically it was my second dose. The first time I had tried it, I had tried a lower quantity. Back then I had no idea about quality or extraction source. I had really never even seen it before. So I had tried a lower dose, knowing what I know now, it was likely an inferior batch. So it didn't really have an effect. I had some light visuals, some light pulsating visuals, but nothing that got me through even just an entry level dose. And so on my technical second dose, I believe I had consumed approximately 100 milligrams, and I had used, obviously vaporized it because it was free-base DMT. So that was the one that actually contributed to my legitimate first experience.
Is there anything else you can say as far as like where you were in that point of your life? Well, whatever you're comfortable expressing, of course, like this, you were having some dark thoughts at the time. So as much as you're willing to express in regards to what led you to those thoughts.
I wouldn't say, I mean, almost everyone has childhood trauma, and I'm sure that contributes to a lot of people's underlying problems. But for me, I had served in the US military, and depression and stuff like that had started while in the military. And of course, being deployed to Afghanistan, I had experienced certain events which had contributed to the development of PTSD. While in the military, things had gotten worse, so I was able to get out. And then upon coming home, which should have, at least in my mind and my caretaker's mind at the time, my medical caretakers, they thought that would be like essentially the cure to the problem, but it ended up not being that way because anyone who suffers with these types of disorders, whether they be depression, anxiety, PTSD, it's not something that just goes away, especially when it's more in its severe cases. So upon coming home, it was just really a loss of direction, a loss of purpose in life. Like a good way to describe it was when my several therapists at the time actually tried to have me describe what I was feeling. The simplest answer I could give them was, it's like I'm living in a world with no color. Everything is black and white and gloomy. Like I can't find connections with people. It's very hard to connect with people, especially because foundationally I'm a very introverted person, on top of the hypervigilance and that loss of ability to really like connect and trust people. It's just very hard on a baseline to do that. So I felt very isolated and alone, and then also just not knowing where to go with my life, not knowing what to do. Didn't want to do anything on a similar pathway with the military. I had tried different pathways through life. I went to school for different things and all that, and nothing was just really clicking. So it got to a point where it felt like, why am I even here? This is just like a waste of time. Like all I'm doing is waking up every day and trying to find a way to justify living in pain all the time. And so at that point, and for a lot of people, I'm sure it's this way, you just get tired of having to wake up and find a reason to live. And so at that point, like I said, I had been going through my research already, hearing about all these different testimonies and anecdotal evidence of what people had experienced. So I said, you know what, if this doesn't work based on what I've heard, how it helped people, for me, going through significantly worse episodes in their life, then I was just done, because I had essentially given up on fighting the will to live.
Damn. Once again, I'm glad that you're still here today.
Yeah, thanks, man. I have one close friend who, because I don't really know. At the time, I didn't know people. I'd never done drugs before in any capacity. So I had one friend who I let them know what I was doing, of course, setting up a good setting. I'm very big on that. Wanted to make sure I had one source of contact if, things got too intense, so they knew what I was doing. I found a comfortable space in my home, and I'm not sure why, but listening to what other people said, I put on some type of visuals from YouTube. Can't remember, but it was like DMT visuals or watch this while you're tripping out. And put that on, made sure the room was nice and quiet. It was sometime in the evening, so the only source of light that was emanating was coming from those visuals that I had put on. I believe at the time I didn't know about the different delivery methods, so what had been recommended to me was like the very archaic form of vaporization using a 2-liter Coke bottle. And so I had set that up with the materials that had been provided to me. Yeah, I believe it was 100 milligrams because with the previous experience, I said, I guess I'm going to just go big dose, go all in. If this doesn't work, then I don't think anything else is going to work. So I had everything set up and fired it up, and that's when the experience started. After vaporization, I initially took 1 hit. And for those, it's hard to describe for those who haven't done it, but when you first vaporize DMT, whether you feel it in the first, or you launch off in the first inhale or subsequent inhales, it's almost like you're feeling like you're gonna pass out, and your vision gets kind of like the lights dim or brighten, or both at the same time. You just feel yourself get very faint, and then there's this very distinct like hum, and at the same time your body like vibrates, like almost on an atomic level, some people describe it. And so on my first inhale, that's what happened, and I kind of got freaked out. And I had read like, this is what happens. You inhale, you hold it for the set amount of time, you exhale, and if you don't launch off yet, you do another inhale. So in my state of panic, I had remembered those instructions. So I took another quick inhale, tried to calm myself down, and then I hit it again. And that's when I remember looking at the screen, and while still holding my breath and looking at the screen, just the walls and everything started to like breathe, but at the same time kind of disintegrate. And as I let out my breath on the exhale, the only way I can describe it, it's like my body disintegrated into atoms, and I felt like I died right in that moment. Yeah, the only way I could describe it is like that's what death must have felt like. And in that moment, I had the most intense sense of terror I had ever felt in my life. And I had been in war, so I was always in a constant state of fear. But that was like the most intense feeling. A part of me was trying to get control of the situation because, I'm pretty sure anybody would freak out feeling their body dissolve into basically atoms in an instant. But something inside me was like, you know what? Hey man, if you're gonna die, you're gonna die. This is it. Just let go. If you're dying right now in this moment, just let it happen, because what do you have to lose? And in that moment, I decided, okay, just let go. And I guess this is where a lot of people describe when they have a breakthrough experience. They kind of go through hyperspace, almost like a tunnel. And that's what I experienced. I started blasting off through this tunnel. And the only way similar I can describe it is going through hyperspace, like in Star Wars. Happened for a while. I'm not sure exactly in real time the amount of time it happened, but it felt like I was gone for a while. But then I came to this gate, and this is one of the few memories or standout memories I have from the experience. But at the gate was this figure that I could only describe as like an elephant deity with multiple arms. And I had stopped traveling and was waiting at this gate, and the elephant deity started to wave its arms around, kind of like blocking the path. But then it looked at me and kind of like signaled me to come forward, and then moved out of the way. And then I journeyed into what a lot of people describe as that hyperspace dimension. And upon entering, it was typically what a lot of people describe, very geometrical structures and shapes. But at some point in the journey, I had like descended down into like this very dark place where everything got very, very almost black. And it felt like very dark in this place. And I was there, all I remember about it was I was there for a very, very long time. Those negative feelings come up again, the depression, the anxiety, a lot of fear. But something in this darkness had told me, like, you need to overcome this. Like, you need to have courage and just outlast it. While there, that's exactly what I did. I just found the courage to persist in this dark place. The easiest way to describe it was I found some type of resilience in this area. Like, if I can overcome this, I can overcome anything. And I'm not sure how long I was there, but again, a good amount of time. And at some point, this being, I guess, penetrated through the darkness. And it was female and like a female type of energy. I can't really describe how exactly she looked, but it was like the perfect example of like a mother. And so that's the name I gave to her was, this is the mother. A lot of people said, well, is this Mother Ayahuasca, or is this like the female entity people talk about when they use ayahuasca? And I'm not sure. But this mother entity broke through the darkness and picked me up and held me like I was like her baby. And when I described it to people following my experience, the only way I could describe it was like being held by sunshine. And she was just this bright, energy, white energy, just shining her light on me. And I just felt like a baby in her arms. And then what she told me is like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you made it. Like, you don't need to be afraid anymore. And the one message I got that stuck with me all these years was like, you don't need to worry about being alone. You've never been alone. I've always been here with you. And you just need to remember that, and you don't need to be afraid anymore. And after receiving that message, I had left hyperspace and returned to, I guess, my physical form. And I just remember I was bawling my eyes out. But at the same time, I had felt like very rejuvenated and refreshed. And I called up my support, talked to her about what had happened. And what she told me following my call was, I had said that I felt like a piece of my soul had been restored, and that now I felt complete. And next day after my experience, because I believe I went to sleep shortly after that, the majority, because not all of it has gone obviously, but in that moment, the majority of the depression I had felt for so many years between 2012 and 2016 had completely gone away. And that was the first time when I stepped outside my door, I looked outside and looked at the world. And for the first time in 4 years, I saw the world had all this color, and it was overwhelmingly beautiful. And I didn't have that desire to find purpose to live. I just knew that life was worth living.
That's amazing. How about like the following, like, I guess, weeks or months, maybe even years after? How did that experience resonate with you?
So one of the first, so of course, like what I like to explain to people is that, especially with underlying mental conditions, is that it's very important to understand that, these, I call them sacred medicines. They're not necessarily like magical cure-alls. Like, you can't expect to take it once or even 5 or even sometimes 100 times and expect to be cured. The power of these medicines is to they provide you the tools within yourself to work on your problems, right? So I like to be sure to tell people, like, I'm not 100% cured. I still suffer from this, but following that first experience, significant reductions in depression, anxiety, hypervigilance went way down. Certain triggers from my PTSD significantly reduced. I felt more able to connect with people, more willing to engage with people because I started to see them in a new light. And with the experience itself, I guess this is more of from a esoteric spiritual perspective. But that aspect of the initial stages of my journey where I had encountered this elephant deity, like I was like, something about this, like I know something about this. So I started scouring the internet, DMT, elephant deity and all that. And then I started to look at religious iconography. And that's when I came upon, like, I want to say the Wikipedia page for Lord Ganesha in the Hindu religion. And I was like, yo, this, and so I called my friend up and I was like, yo, this is what I saw on my journey. I saw Lord Ganesha. And I had never learned about Lord Ganesha outside of very minute studies in like high school social studies class about Hinduism. So I started to read into the page and read about Lord Ganesha. And there came to a point where it said that Lord Ganesha is considered, I guess, a god that removes obstacles from your life. And that totally like freaked me out, because I had felt like this huge obstacle in my life had been removed. And now I could live my life more freely. And so to this day, that's something where when I do encounter difficulties, even though I struggle with them, like, I just remember that one experience, that, like, the Lord of the obstacle removers has removed these obstacles from your life, so you can do it if you just stick with it. So yeah, that's why I always consider my first trip probably the most important I've ever been on.